Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abbas Niamati. Moving to next slide. This presentation is focused on finding recommendations that will constructively move the UK forward in driving the uptake of EV vehicles. Norway has been chosen as a case study and frame of reference from comparison with the UK. Norway's success in driving the number of EV registration is the reason for this choice. The question we shall be considering whether the UK may benefit from updating some of Norway's strategy and policies. Moving next slide. This is an overview of the structure of the presentation. A brief overview of the EV market, EU market, will show the discrepancy between Norway and the UK in terms of the EV purchase and EV charging point distribution. Emission target and policy will be referenced for the both regions. Norway advantage for EV buyer and user will be explained, and UK initiative to encourage EV purchase and usage will also be details. Conclusion will be drawn and recommendation give for improving UK strategy. Moving next slide. This is fact showing that Norway is 33% larger than UK, but its population is more than 10 times smaller. GDP per capita is a country economic input divided by its population. It is gave a good estimate of a standard living, and it tells us how much the citizen benefit from the national economy. As can be seen here, Norway has a higher GDP than the UK. In fact, it is 75% higher. Income tax is one of the most important streams of revenue for every government. But although the UK standard of living is lower, it is the highest tax rate is 45%. Moving next slide. The statements here have been designed to personalize the companies between the regions. From this summary, compared to the UK, an average Norwegian citizen uses considerably more electricity and oil. They are also more likely to be in employment. Moving next slide. BEV stands for battery operated electric vehicle. I shall continue to use the shorter EV for electric vehicle. Norway figure for EV registration jumped from almost 10,000 to over 18,000 in 12 months period 2018 to 2019. This an increase approximately 80%. UK figure for the same period show an increase of 50%. Norway is asserting itself as the leading market for electric vehicle. Moving next slide. The UK has a far or lower density of charging points, but also lower number of EV registrations compared to Norway. Norway is a matching, it is a higher EV registration with a coping infrastructure. We can see here the Norway has been operating a more aggressive policy for installing charging point station. Moving next slide. In the last 12-month period, UK total EV sales have jumped from the just over 70,000 to 175,000. This means that there is an urgent need to significantly increase the number of charging stations. The 1.3 billion allocated pound intended to cover multiple areas as listed here. Moving next slide. Let us consider two Norwegian incentives that have made a significant difference to their EV sales and ownership. EV owners do not have to pay road tax or any parking fee. They are also exempt from toll payment, and EVs can drive in bus lanes. Moving next slide. In the UK, there are several incentives for a purchase of the new vehicle. The plug-in car grant is worth up to £3,000. Cars are exempt from London congestion charge and from paying road tax. In Scotland, an interest-free loan is available. Recognizable green number plate make it is possible to obtain free parking and some access to bus lanes. Moving next slide. An EV batteries is only guaranteed for up to 8 years. Price of replacement battery vary, but they are still quite expensive. Charging an EV at home is cheap, but many UK citizens do not have a garage or off-street parking. To charge a battery can take up to 20 minutes. Move next slide. In Norway, petrol driving cars only represent 10% of total domestic CO2 emissions. Around 9% of households own an electric vehicle, but many of these also own a petrol driving car. But the emission from my high income family are significantly higher than from the lower income ones. Moving next slide. In February 2020, 10% of Norway cars were electric. And in February 2020, Norway submitted its enhanced Paris Agreement target NDC over a rating by CAT as a climate action tracker is insufficient. In 2019, battery electric vehicle reached a 42% market share. Moving to next slide. Carbon dioxide accounted for approximately 81% of all UK emission in 2018. Then, in June 2019, secondary legislation was passed that expand 2008 to at least 100% net zero by 2050. The 100% net zero target is highly challenging and reliant on EV cells. The Climate Action Tracker rate the UK current strategies as almost sufficient. Moving to next slide. A significant proportion of UK citizens are not able to afford a new EV. The average amount paid for a car bought at auction was £5,588. Converting these cells into EVs requires some serious consideration. More changing are needed than just increasing charging point or offering tax incentives. Moving next slide. For both of Norway and the UK, their emission strategy is not guaranteed. To achieve the climate change target in time, the UK has taken the initiative with the net zero target by 2050, but now must achieve it. The tax incentives offered by Norway precede very good progress in EV cells. This could be a route for the UK to follow. In the UK, it will be challenged to reach a situation where second-hand petrol car sales are 10 into EV purchase. Moving next slide. Affordability is still a major issue for many of the population, together with the concern about battery life, cost, and recharging. Recommendations are as follows: to create new strategy to address lack of overnight charging for the drivers with only on-street parking, to increase the density and distribution of fast charging stations, to create incentive to encourage less will of consumer to buy electric vehicles, to forge partnerships with the private sector for research and development into improving battery range and lifespan. And that brings us to end of the presentation. Thank you very much.